Welcome back to another Romantasy book recap. Today we are talking about The Fallen and the Kiss of Dusk by Carissa Broadbent. This is the fourth book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. I did the previous book, the third book. Oh gosh, what was it called? Don't you love how every romance book these days is like the noun and the noun of noun? I feel like it makes it hard for me to remember the names of any of them. Okay, book 3 was The Songbird and the Heart of Stone. So I did a recap on that book if you need a recap for that one. But today we were talking about book 4. It just kind of, I think it just came out at like the end of 2025. The book took me forever to read because I was doing this recap and I wanted to make sure I got all these details correct. In my opinion, this book was a little bit complicated with some of the details, so please don't ask me any specifics about the spira or like anything about that like mirror thing at the Mellume because I didn't quite understand it. Don't let that deter you because I have a really good recap and summary for you guys if you are going into book 5, or if you just feel like you don't know what you just read and you want someone to kind of like break down the whole plot for you. Sometimes I feel like I read a book and I'm like, what just happened? Like, I don't know, like you just like take it all in and it's hard to like remember exactly what you just read. If you need that, that's what I'm here for. So let's get into it. So this is the second book in the duet between Asar and Misha. And the next book is going to be about Septimus. I hope I'm saying that right. Book 5 is supposed to come out in August 2026 and it's called The Lion the Deathless Dark. So if you need a recap before you read that book, make sure you come on back here and we can have a little refresher. So if you can pull your memory all the way back to book 3, you might remember that book 3 ends with Misha being dead, basically finding herself in the underworld. She had been killed by the White Pantheon. I didn't do the audiobook for this book, I probably should have. But the goddess of justice, Shikit? I don't know. Shiket? She killed Misha and took Asar prisoner. So Misha finds herself dead and in the underworld being greeted by Vincent, which is Oria's dad, and the former Nightborn king who Rain killed in book 1. Okay, are we putting all these pieces together? That's how book 3 ended. So it picks right back up there. He's telling Misha that he's gonna help her, but he's like not enthused to help her basically because she was the one who kind of like brought Rain and Oria together, and he obviously doesn't like Rain because he killed him and took his spot as the Nightborn king. He tells Misha that a god, and he won't name who, but it's not Nyaxia, made him like a messenger for Misha. Basically the underworld is collapsing and he tells Misha that because she is the one who conducted the necromancy spell to like resurrect Alaris, and then it like failed, you know, and that's how like Asar got all of Alaris's power, blah blah blah. It destroyed the relics and it's putting like all this stress on the underworld that's like causing it to collapse. And because all of like the planes between the mortal world and the underworld are kind of like interconnected, it's gonna like eventually cause a collapse of the mortal world. So they have to repair it, and so like that souls have like a place to go. Now also, if you remember from book 3, like the big climax is Misha kills Atraxus, which is the god of the sun, and it caused the sun to like explode or something like that. So now the world is in darkness. Now this is good for vampires because they live in the dark and they are allergic to the sun, but not good for the mortals, the humans, because they need crops to grow and things like that. And so this lack of sunlight is like allowing the vampires this kind of like opening of like, oh, we can go attack the humans and like kill them, take their land, take their resources, all this stuff. So the gods try to use Asar to like help them to resurrect the sun. It doesn't work. He's eventually able to escape and he has this encounter with Akasha. This is really bad for my pronunciation. She's the goddess of fate. And she basically tells him what he needs to do to save the crumbling underworld. She creates this line of fate between Misha and Asar, and she guides Asar to use like this spira, which is like a web that connects the world and allows the gods to travel and move throughout it. They are like on their way to try to find each other. Along the way, Misha is chased by this sentinel who's like this undead warrior of the goddess Shiket. This is like a reoccurring thing throughout the book, being chased by this specific sentinel. Basically, Misha and Asar find each other, they reunite. Misha is still a wraith, like she's still like dead, but she is in the world of the living, but because Asar is living, it hurts for him to touch Misha and it makes Misha like fade even more, makes her more like translucent. So Asar and Misha establish that they need to find the 3 relics of Alaris, his mask, his eye, and his heart in order to give them the power to save the crumbling underworld. First they go to Ygritte, they go to the Shadowborn vampire world, and if you recall from book 3, Asar has an heir mark, but so does his sister Ygritte. Ygritte has like taken the throne, but Asar really doesn't want the throne, so he basically like pledges his loyalty to Ygritte so that he's not seen as like a threat to her, and he basically is trying to get her approval to go to the archives, which is called Rivenhall, to go gather like information to find the mask during the Mellium. But he doesn't tell Ygritte that. He tells her that he's like going there to try to find some spells to like strengthen their armies for the upcoming war, because Nyaxia has approached Ygritte as well as the House of Blood about attacking human lands to conquer the world during this like darkness that exists. So Misha and Asar arrive at Rivenhall. This is basically where Asar's grown up. They encounter Asar's old mentor. His name is Gideon. He's a bad guy. He basically like tortured Asar as a child. They learn that the mask was like kind of baked into the Shadowborn castle. So because the House of Shadow is built on what used to be the House of Death and the Palace of Vasia, they study maps and like documents of the old palace to be able to find the mask. And they additionally learn that Alaris's eye was forged into an axe, and it is probably still at the site of where he was murdered in the Deadlands, which is like a realm between the mortal and divine worlds, and it's only accessible through the House of Blood. So because Gideon is bad, Asar asks him like, hey, can I have the glyphs to like let me into the mask too? He's like, no, but I'll make you a deal. I'll let you have them if you let me study Misha, because she's a wraith and I like am interested in her. And of course Asar says no. So instead he like pins Gideon down and like pries into his mind and like sketches these like glyphs onto his skin in order to like get the information he needs. He's like basically like torturing Gideon. It's all the information and like spells or whatever that he needs to get the mask, whatever. So throughout the book, like Vincent kind of like stops by as a wraith or something like that, and somehow is like crossing the veil to like talk to Misha. I don't really fully understand this part, but basically he like gives her information, advice, whatever. So he tells her like, hey, you need to go to the House of Night, because when I was king, we cultivated some of Alaris's blood, and maybe it can point you in the direction of his heart. Misha tells him like the House of Night doesn't have it anymore because Araya gave it to Nyaxia in order to save Rain, which is like a total throwback. But Vincent feels certain that like Araya wouldn't have given Nyaxia everything, that she probably still has a little bit of the blood. But Misha really doesn't want to go to the House of Night. She really doesn't want to involve Araya and Rain in order to like keep them safe. She keeps them really at a distance. So Asar and Misha get back to the House of Shadow, and Asar and Ygritte are like working together to like perform this spell in order to like usher in the beginning of Mellium. Mellium is like when the veil is basically like thinnest. You can kind of see the former like Palace of Vasia and like kind of like how things used to be. I don't really know, but it's like this very small window that they have that they can go access the mask. So Asar and Misha plan for Misha to sneak away during the party to go get the mask during that window while Asar is doing that spell with Ygritte. At the Mellium party, before they enact their plan, Septimus shows up, tells Misha like, hey, I know you're trying to get to the Deadlands. I may have someone that can like help you get there. She doesn't know how he knows this, and she also like doesn't trust him based on their history, but she kind of feels like out of options of like how they could get to the Deadlands since it is through the House of Blood. So Asar and Ygritte are performing the spell. Misha's running to go find the mask. Asar's running down the hallway to go catch up with her. He runs into Elias, which is the guard from book 3 who traveled through the descent with them and betrayed Asar. And he tells Asar like, hey, we found Gideon. Like clearly like he knows that Asar heard him and like there's something up, so they're like attacking Asar, and Asar is able to like fight them off and kill Elias, which they later find out was like Ygritte's lover. So he like really is kind of like burning that bridge between him and the House of Shadow. So Asar and Misha make it into the room where this mask is, and there's like this veil to the underworld. So they work together. They are like entering all these glyphs that Asar stole from Gideon's mind. They open up the door. They go to retrieve the mask. And like as Misha is getting it, like a soul eater comes out, grabs Misha. She throws the mask to Asar, and kind of like other God-infused objects or God-blessed objects, they kind of like possess the user and like kind of speak to them, kind of like infect their mind a little bit. Asar knows that, but he puts it on anyway so that he can command one of the guardians to retrieve Misha. Him using the mask that first time kind of sets into course like the mask starting to like kind of infect his mind, where he's starting to hear its voice and stuff like that all the time. They run to escape while leaving this veil to the underworld kind of broken. The Sentinel, who's like always chasing down Misha, she shows up. They have an encounter. Misha uses magic to open like this dusk window in order to let out the dead, who like then go attack the Sentinels, and it gives Asar and Misha like this window to escape. Rain shows up, thinking that he's there to like save Misha from the Shadowborn, but instead of like explaining everything to him and like that she's dead and that she's like on this mission, she uses compulsion to send Rain away to kind of keep him away from everything and keep him safe, which later ends up making him feel really betrayed. Septimus meets them at the docks. Septimus's cousin Atreus and a woman named Silena. I have a feeling we're going to end up seeing them again in book 5. They accompany Misha and Asar to the Deadlands. She is a human acolyte of the goddess Acacia, who is the goddess of fate, and they're like really dedicated. They have their eyesight destroyed so that they can see threads of fate. So she's like a seer. And her country of Gallia, it was conquered by the House of Blood, but now her and Atreus rule it together. I feel like that's going to be important for book 5, but I don't have any proof of that. So the 4 of them make it through this maze of arches, which is like guarded by this keeper, this like demigod. And once they make it through the maze into the keeper, they find him dead. Asar and Misha use necromancy to bring the keeper back to life. The keeper comes back to life. He's really pissed off that they brought him back to life, but he tells them that the gods are planning war and that he doesn't want to live through it. So then he kills himself, but lets them into the Deadlands. They all make it to Alaris's death site in the goddess Saraann. She's the goddess of machinery, I think. She appears, and upon Alaris's death site, Saraann had forged a blade to be able to like cut up a god. Because of what happened at that site, as well as like the axe existing there, because the gods aren't able to like take it or wield it, but it existing there, like they're able to create more like powerful weapons for their holy war. Sentinel from before again shows up and is like fighting Misha, while Asar kind of squares off with Saraann. So the Sentinel is like kicking Misha's butt. They kind of like fall into this forge, and things are not looking great for Misha, but she finds the axe down in the forge with the Eye of Alaris, and she grabs it, and because it has this like all-seeing Eye of Alaris, she's able to see the Spira and basically walks back into life. I think so. She walks out of the forge and gives the axe to Asar, and he fights Saraann and takes her arm. At this point, Misha is like losing a lot of blood and like things aren't looking great for her, so he puts on the mask again in order to walk the Spira with Misha to bring her to the House of Night to keep her safe and like get her healed. And he also uses the mask and the axe in order to heal Misha. So once they get to the House of Night, Rain and Aurora are like, we don't know Asar, so they like lock him up. And they're also like upset with Misha because like she had compulsed Rain to leave, and that felt like a betrayal. But they talk to Rain and Aurora, and they learn that they do actually still have some of Alaris's blood that they are refining. And since they just need the one more relic in order to like kind of like heal the underworld, keep it from collapsing, it's especially collapsing under the House of Night, they're hoping that with the blood they can open up like a door to the Spira and use the blood to kind of direct them to the heart of Alaris. They also learn at this point that Misha is suddenly like a lot more solid and able to touch Asar, and they learn that even though she still belongs to the dead, the Eye of Alaris was able to bring her close enough to living. Araya and Rain send for Vale, which I think is like their general of war or something like that. They send for him to go retrieve Alaris's blood that they have like hidden out far away. Asar and Misha are working together to like build this ritual circle in order to open up a door to the Spira. To be completely honest, I don't really understand why they have to do this, since like they've opened up the Spira several times with the mask, but that's beside the point. While they're working, this huge split in the veil happens, and they realize like the collapse of the underworld is actively happening. Like they need to get a move on, so they repair things best they can. Vale arrives, but they quickly realize that it's actually Gideon using like illusion to disguise himself as Vale. They realize this is like all a trap, and that Vale had like used an anchor spell to track down Asar when Asar had like carved all those spells out of his mind. The Sentinels break in, and the one who'd been like tracking Misha takes her away to Vostis, which, if you remember, was where Misha grew up and like served Atraxis as a priestess and like his bride, the Sentinel, and all these like humans plan to sacrifice Misha since she's a vampire and killed Atraxis. But right before she's about to be sacrificed, Misha kind of like pieces together that the attack with Vale was like really probably a distraction from Nyaxia, and that the vampires are probably about to attack the mortal lands. Honestly, I don't really know how she came to this conclusion. I reread it like 50 times and I'm still like, I don't really understand this part, but whatever. And all of a sudden they're under attack. Vampires are attacking Vostis as an act of war. Misha is able to like escape from her shackles and has another encounter with the same Sentinel, whose mask is now cracked and she can now see is her sister Sasha. So after Misha is taken, Asar uses their ritual circle to like go find her, but also to lead him to the heart of Alaris. And when he shows up in Vostis, Ygritte is there. She attacks Asar with this spear that has the petals that Elias had stolen from Asar in the Descent, which is like a throwback to book 3. Because it was like a god-touched object, it has the ability to take down Asar, who is technically a demigod at this point. Then Nyaxia shows up and Ygritte basically is presenting Asar as an offering to her. And at that point, Asar kind of like all the pieces click into place and he realizes that Nyaxia is the one who has the heart of Alaris. Basically, Alaris knew that his siblings were planning to kill him, so he gave Nyaxia his heart. And then after he died, Nyaxia was able to use his heart to rise to divinity. And so Asar offers himself as an ally to her. He tells her that if she ascends Asar into a god, that they can take on the White Pantheon together. And if she is able to like spare the House of Night and spare the humans for now in order to like make them suffer long term, that would be better for whatever reason. So he offers his heart and it's traded out for Alaris's heart, which ascends him into a god. Now, why giving up Alaris's heart doesn't like demote Nyaxia? Again, I don't understand. And with this new heart, basically he doesn't recognize Misha, nor does he like really remember any of his past life as a vampire, which isn't great because he kind of like planned to ascend to godhood in order to like make a difference, save people and stuff like that, but all of a sudden he doesn't remember Misha or really why he's doing this at all. So Asar's ascension to a god really did stop the imminent destruction of the underworld and the House of Night, though, which is good. And Misha ends up in the Sanctum of the Soul and encounters Vincent again, who reveals that it was the goddess of fate, Akaja, who sent him to Misha because the love of his life, which was Araya's mother, her name's Alana, she had served her. He also reminds Misha that Misha has a piece of Alaris's power because she was the one who wielded the Eye of Alaris and climbed out of the forge and remade herself. He tells her that the underworld is not the territory of the gods, it is the kingdom of the dead, and the dead have chosen Misha basically to rule over the underworld. So Misha gets an air mark and she's given a sword by the dead. And as she moves through the Descent, kind of like repairing and helping people, Asar is also going through the Descent. Because he has the heart of Alaris, he feels like so drawn to the underworld, which is what Alaris had created. And so he kind of like keeps going through the Descent. For whatever reason, he kind of keeps like leaving pieces of himself there. He like leaves a poppy that he brings back to life. He leaves this like crown that he touches and blesses, made from one of the skulls of a former guardian. And so as Misha is like also going through the Descent, she's like picking up all these pieces and like it's giving her power. And then Misha has like her kind of final encounter with the Sentinel, and realizes that mortals become Sentinels because of their like desire for justice. And while Misha had thought Sasha was after justice for her own death at the hands of Misha and justice for the death of Atraxis, what Sasha had really been seeking justice for was for Mish and her own like kind of mortality being taken away from her when she became a vampire. So Misha is able to guide Sasha's soul to kind of like peace. Finally, Misha makes it to Morthrin and enters this room that is like, looks like Rivenhall, and there's this young 8-year-old Asar, and she kind of talks to him, and he gives her the heart of Asar that had been discarded when Asar took on Alaris's heart and threw out his mortal heart. Meanwhile, Nyaxia is telling Asar, who is now the god of death, like he needs to raise up the army of the dead for their war. And Asar tries, but he's like met with all this resistance, and he realizes that there is someone in the underworld who is challenging his ability to summon the dead. So he goes to Morthrend to fight whoever is challenging him. They kind of like have this little battle. But in their fighting, there is like this piece of Asar that has this moment of recognition for Misha, and he tells her, cut out my heart. The pieces of Asar's power that he had left within the descent without like fully understanding why he was doing it gives Misha the power to confront Asar and cut out his heart. She removes half of it, which still gives him divinity, but puts his mortal heart back in. And I think she takes the other half of Alaris's heart to give her power. However, the divinity of Alaris's heart ends up being kind of like too much for Misha, because she used to be a human, then she became a vampire, then she was a wraith. Like, she's been all these different things, and divinity is like too much for her body to handle. So she basically passes out. All the gods show up. Nyaxia shows up. She's pissed that they've taken her former husband's heart. But before she can punish them, Acacia basically claims the House of Night and the House of Death as hers rather than Nyaxia's. Because of her ability to see fates, she says this is the way that they can avoid destruction of all. And then Acacia heals Misha and tells them to rebuild and prepare their armies for what is to come. So the book ends with Asar and Misha rebuilding the underworld, and Vincent passing a note to Misha for Araya. There are all these newly carved out borders between the House of Death and the House of Shadow. And there are vampire cities along with the dead that kind of fall under Misha and Asar's rule. Araya and Rain show up, and they come visit to strategize for the upcoming war. They also bring Vale, who they learn had been captured by the Shadowborn when Gideon posed as him earlier, basically. And Asar and Misha walk through the descent, and Misha has one more encounter with Sasha, whose soul kind of like finally seems at peace. And then they conduct this like traditional Vathisian wedding ceremony, which is similar to a necromancy spell, in order to link their souls. So happy ending, but there's like this war that's incoming. Now, since we know that the Lion and the Deathless Dark is going to be about the Bloodborne and Septimus, there is a little bit of information that we got from the epilogue of The Fallen and the Kiss of Dusk, as well as like a few things that I remember from previous books that I kind of wanted to include in here to maybe hopefully get your mind prepared for book 5, refresh your memory a little bit. Like I said, I don't think this is the last time we're going to see Septimus's cousin Atreus and Silena. I have a feeling they're probably going to make a cameo in book 5. But here's what we know about the Bloodborne. The Bloodborne are cursed by Nyaxia. The symptoms of the Bloodborne curse are varied, but they kind of like get these like red eyes. They get these black scarlet veins underneath like thinning skin, and then they like reach insanity at the end of their curse and die. The Bloodborne do have this like blood magic that they can wield. They're able to manipulate the blood of living things. Because the Bloodborne are dealing with this curse, a lot of them seem like very calculated, especially Septimus. I include this quote that Atreus said in The Fallen and the Kiss of Dusk. I thought it was like kind of interesting to kind of give us a glimpse of what the Bloodborne are like. I think throughout the series they seem like very ruthless, very calculated. They're always making deals and stuff like that, but I think that the curse kind of like makes them quite different from the other vampires. We also know that the Bloodborne were called by Nyaxia for the holy war that is brewing, despite her dislike for them. I don't actually really know why they're cursed. There is another book by Carissa Broadbent that I think maybe is about the Bloodborne, and I haven't read it. And I wonder if that gives some information as to why, or maybe we're going to find out in book 5. I'm not really sure. So if you've read that book, or if you have any more information about the Bloodborne, let me know in the comments. This is Saraann in editing. I'm stupid. And it turns out that the book that I'm talking about is called Slaying the Vampire Conqueror. It is a book that is supposed to be read in between the Crowns of Nyaxia series. It's like 2.5, so it was supposed to be read in between the duet between Araya and Rain and Asar and Misha. I didn't know that. I didn't know it existed. But it turns out it's about Silena and Atreus. So that probably would be a helpful book to read. I probably will try to go back and read it before I read this next book, book 5. And if I find any information, I'll include it in the comments. But yeah, just so you know, that's where they come from. And it turns out there's a whole book about them. Okay, bye. I do know that the House of Death and the House of Night are on the side of Acacia. And the House of Shadow and the House of Blood are seemingly on the side of Nyaxia. However, Septimus brought Asar and Misha to the Deadlands, which kind of begs the question as to why, right? Like, what was he getting out of it? Was he planning for his cousin Atreus to betray Asar and Misha to, like, maybe hopefully kill them? However, Silena is a former human acolyte of the goddess Acacia, we know is on the side of the House of Death and the House of Night. And the fact that Atreus and Silena were the ones to take them there makes you wonder if Septimus is maybe not loyal to Nyaxia. In the epilogue in The Fallen and the Kiss of Dusk, it's completely in Septimus's POV, and it kind of seems to confirm this and kind of give us a little bit of insight for the next book. I'm going to include a quote that I think kind of maybe makes me think that maybe he's not loyal to Nyaxia. Also in the epilogue, we get this like 10-year time jump, and it seems to tell us that this war is still going on. Like, the sun is still not restored. They've been fighting all this time. I'm very interested to see what the timeline is going to look like for book 5, if we're going to start maybe with a time jump, or if we're going to see what the 10-year war period was like, what's gone on. What did you guys think of this book? I think I liked it maybe a little bit less than book 3. I still really like Misha's character. I think I liked Asar's character maybe a little bit less in this book, but I'm really excited to read book 5. I think it's going to be an interesting change with Septimus. I think that there's something very like mysterious about him, so I think it will be an interesting book, and I'm really excited to read it. If I missed anything, please let me know in the comments. And also, if you have any insight on the Bloodborne, any predictions for book 5, let me know, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!